So I had some feedback on one of the recent videos I did. People got quite a lot of value from it, which is good, and I had some comments on there that I agreed with, quite a few that I disagreed with. And I think the overall sort of message is that the system itself, the system, isn't set up for the average man, right? That's, I think, agreed by anybody with a few brain cells to rub together, right? But I think there's a question to be asked whether the so-called system has been put there sort of nefariously by a small group of people in a small room who are sort of controlling everything. You sort of go down the conspiracy world, or whether it's more of like an efficient infrastructure that's sort of unfolded over time in order to make things easier to trade. Because if you go through history, you look at the history of money, we've sort of gone from barter and using precious metals, and then we're sort of using fiat currency at the moment. As human paradigms and as the collective state changes, technology evolves and adapts. We always seem to think that the world's going to end, or there's going to be some sort of radical shift in how we do things. And the reality is that we're just changing and adapting to the technology that's sort of been revealed to us. So, yeah, the system isn't set up for the average man, but that's because, in my opinion, the average man hasn't took the time to work out the system itself. You're no good blaming if you sort of buy into that it's a small group of people in a room. It's no good blaming these people that you're not making enough money to live or whatever. You have to take that by the horns and actually do something about that, whether that's starting your own company, learning to invest, learning to utilise debt, all these different things. Well, no good pissing and moaning about it. You either do it and utilise those structures that are in place, or you just enjoy poverty. So it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? I see it all the time, and like I try and make a study of money and the history of money, and also the philosophy of money and everything, and time and energy, and what that time and energy is in relation to money, and how that's siphoned off in the form of inflation, currency debasement, things like that. And that's a very real thing. But if you're aware of it, and anybody can be aware of it nowadays, because the access to information is more or less limitless. If you're aware of that, do something about that. Learn that if you take out debt at 5% and currency debasement 7 or 8%, there's a 2% positive. You're 2% positive across 12 months. Now, you do with that information what you will. I'm not saying get into debt for the sake of getting into debt, but I'm saying utilise how debt may be of financial benefit if you know how to use it correctly. So that's just an idea. But if I touch on that time and energy in relation to money, and also in relation to currency debasement, the system itself actively drains you of life force. And when I say life force, is that if you spend 40 hours a week in a job, that currency debasement is making your time worth less. Because every pound you earn is going to be worth less for the time that you're selling to the boss or whoever it is, the government or whoever you work for. So I'm not saying don't get a job. I'm not saying don't earn money, I'm not saying anything. I'm not suggesting anything here. I'm just saying just learn. Just understand that how things operate and the structures that we have in place at the moment are not serving the average man, but that doesn't mean the average man cannot create wealth for themselves but you have to put in the work to learn. And this is why I talk about Bitcoin to people close to me, is that throughout history technology has evolved and adapted, and we adapt to that evolution. to me, it seems like we've gone through that next, or we're starting to begin to move through that next phase of what we consider money to be. Gold and silver used to be money. It still is in some sense. It's a hedge against inflation. It's much better than leaving it in cash in a bank account. And it's a question rather than a statement. Is Bitcoin that new money standard? Is it the only real perfect money that we have? It's portable, durable, it's a store of value. These things are needed to be money. Fiat currency is not a store of value, so it can't be money. Gold is a store of value, but it isn't portable in the sense of like Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, you can put it on a ledger and you can go around the world with it. If you want to move 50 kilogram of gold, you can't put it in a suitcase because they won't let you leave the country. The other country won't let you in the country without going through customs and telling them what you've got and all that crap, probably taxing you on it and all sorts. So in my opinion, Bitcoin is that next movement, that next adaptation to technological evolution of what we call money. But in essentially, money is stored time and energy, and how we use money or fiat cash is currency. They're not the same thing, money and currency. I'll do a video on that. But as we use currency to trade, that is essentially your stored energy that is being used for commerce. Now, when you look at that, the deeper understanding of what that is and more the philosophical outlook of what that is, what you spend your hard-earned cash on changes. You don't waste money on stupid stuff. You learn to invest differently. You have a different outlook on the decisions that you're making in your work life, even in your relationships. In my opinion, it's more of a spiritual journey than it is like a material one. You sort of evolve and adapt, and your sort of a consciousness gets wider, and so I always focus on that. My worldview. I always focus on worldview. My mental and spiritual development is far more important than what we're doing day to day. If you focus on that and you sort of turn inward, all this information, it seems to just like present itself. It's sort of revealed to you as you ask for it. So the system isn't set up for the average man, but that's because the average man doesn't take the time to look for it. It doesn't take the time out to stop on the rat race. Yeah, the rat race been set up by, who's it been set up by? Is it been set up by the average man as a distraction for his own internal state? He can't handle himself, so therefore he creates an external rat race. I think that's probably more likely than there's a small group of men in a room who are dictating what's going on in the world. I'm not saying that isn't the case. I don't know, and I don't think anybody really does. They're just sort of thinking that they do. But even if that is the case, do something about it. Don't sit there and moan and complain, and bitch about it, and lose wealth every single year because you're not educating yourself on it. Go out there, and the amount of access, as I've said, it's limitless. That you can't get more access to information. It's the implementation that people need help with. So yeah, I hope that gives a bit of a clearer idea on how I think about it all, and gives some people a kick up the backside as well.